I know Elaine was, yeah.
All right, we still have got 2 attendees. Awesome. There we go. There we go. We're almost there. Good evening, everyone. This is the community meeting for LARC Ranch and Lily of the Valley Pipeline Project. We're going to get started in a minute. I just want to give a couple attendees a chance to get logged on, and we should be ready to go. All right, I'll give about another minute or two, and then we're going to go ahead and get started. So thank you for your patience. All right. All right, I'm going to go ahead and get started. This is the community meeting for LARC Ranch and Lily of the Valley Pipeline Project. First, a couple housekeeping items. Participant information, we're going to mute your mics. And we're going to use the Q&A button and the chat function. So ask questions as they come to you. The meeting format itself, presentation is about 45 minutes or probably a little bit less. And then we will have time at the end to make sure that we get your questions answered. And then if there's any additional questions after the meeting's over, we're going to make sure that we send responses out to all of the attendees. And also, if you'd like to follow up with our project manager, Brent Payne, you can contact him directly. His information will be at the end of the PowerPoint. And then just so you're familiar, these are what the little buttons look like for Q&A and for chat. So go ahead and use those during the meeting as you need to. And now I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to introduce tonight we have with us our Assistant General Manager, Steve Cole. He's going to be hanging out and can help answer questions at the end.
Thank you, Lindsay. Thanks for joining us tonight. Happy to see everybody on. Thanks.
And as well as Courtney Mail, he's our Chief Engineer. He oversees the SCV Water's engineering services section since 2020. He's got 25 plus years of experience working in Southern California water agencies. And he's got an expertise with planning, design, and construction of water infrastructure.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for being here.
And I also want to introduce Brent Payne. He is the principal engineer and he is also the project manager. So he has been with this project since inception in 2015. And with that, I will go ahead and turn it over to Brent.
Good evening, everyone. And I want to thank everyone for coming. We just to add to Lindsay's welcome. We want to say welcome everyone to this virtual meeting. We thank you for your interest. We know this proposed pipeline's been a long time coming. particularly for the folks at LARC Ranch, Chris Ratzel and Kathy Sturkey and their community. We're excited about what this means, not only to LARC, but Lily of the Valley and the property owners along the pipeline route. The extended drought conditions we've seen in recent years have made it all the more important, we know, to provide a reliable water supply in this area. I'd also like to say we're grateful to the State Water Resources Control Board for providing a grant that will cover the lion's share of the cost for the new pipeline. And for those that don't know, the grant was actually made possible through a Senate bill known as Proposition 68 or Prop 68 that allocated funds for projects for public water systems that serve disadvantaged communities. And so I want to thank the state for that. They've been a big part of this. Also want to say thanks to our great public outreach team, Lindsay and the folks that have helped us publish the mailers and help us set up and organize this webinar. So with that, next slide, please, Lindsay. So the purpose of this virtual meeting is to present an overview of the project and answer the questions we've received so far. And as you may or may not know, grant-funded projects have a lot of hoops to jump through before you can actually start construction. So we'll show the project milestones and where we're at in the process at this time. And of course, we know the biggest question is about how to connect to the new pipeline. So the bulk of the meeting agenda is really focused on new connections, how to apply, how much it will cost, when to pay, whether the grant will cover the costs or not. So we'll try to spend some time on that. So next slide, please. So the project overview, let me start by just saying that the grant funds are available to us because we're consolidating two small communities that each operate under a public water supply permit with the county and the state. They both serve communities that qualify as small disadvantaged communities under state criteria based on their income level. Of course, these communities are the Los Angeles Residential Community or LARC, and also Lily of the Valley Mobile Village. Both of these communities are located outside our current pipeline network system, but are within our greater SCV Water service area. So our current pipeline ends at the intersection of Bouquet Canyon Road and Shadow Valley Lane. The project will construct a new 12-inch pipeline that will extend about 1.8 miles along Bouquet Canyon Road from Shadow Valley Lane to LARC, which you know is located just north of Vasquez Canyon Road. We'll be installing new master meters in front of Lily of the Valley and in front of LARC within the public right-of-way. The grant funds, I'll say, cover the cost of an 8-inch pipeline, which is what we and the state determined was needed just to serve LARC and Lily of the Valley. But as you know, SCV Water decided to upsize the pipeline to a 12-inch so that existing property owners, such as yourselves, along the pipeline route may connect if they so choose. The pipeline will be a ductile iron pipe, which comes in some standard sizes like 8-inch and 12-inch are two common sizes. And we opted for the 12-inch, which is the next size up basically from an 8-inch. So next slide, please. So we're all interested in the timeline for the project. So we put together this flow chart to show the milestones and their approximate timeline. And as you can see, there's still a few steps in the approval process with both the state and our SCV Water Board before we can actually start construction. So first up, we need to take your request for new meters and then finalize the plans and the bid package. We'll get that approved by the state and then we can advertise for bids. And that's the first circle in this chart that's happening in October. Moving to the next step, after we receive bids, we will review those bids and then prepare what's called a final budget approval package that we have to submit to the State Water Board for their approval. This step is required by the state as a condition of the grant agreement, which we hold. The state has said they need about 2 to 3 months to review and approve that final budget package before we can move forward to the next step. Once we receive the state's final approval, we can take it to our SCV Water Board to approve the construction contract and then actually start construction. Yay! So we are estimating about a year or more to complete the construction. And you might ask, why does it take so long? And I guess the time for construction really depends on a couple of key factors these days. One is the time that's required to actually procure or purchase the pipe materials and get them on site. And in recent months, and even the last couple of years with COVID, and we've seen some long lead time to purchase ductile iron pipe on the order of several months, actually. So this is due to supply chain issues. Plus, there's also been a heavy demand for pipe across Southern California and the greater Southwest area. The other factor is just the daily work hours that a pipeline contractor will need based on traffic concerns along Bouquet Canyon Road. The county will place some restrictions on the contractor to avoid peak traffic in the early morning and late afternoon. And this means that the contractor may be limited to 6 to 8 hours a day of actual work to install the pipeline. So that's some of the reason for the long time that we're estimating at this point. This timeline is shown on our website. Please note this is a dynamic process and subject to change. So we will be updating the website with the latest schedule on a monthly basis as we move forward. So I would encourage you to check the website every month or so for updates. And you can also call me or Courtney or Steve or Josephine, one of our staff. So next slide, please. So opportunity to connect. As I said, we've upsized the pipe. So there is capacity for existing property owners to connect to the pipeline. New customers must pay for the cost for the new connection. And that's in accordance with our established SCV Water policy. And I'll talk more about the cost here in another slide, just a moment. There are a few conditions associated with placement of a new meter. We place them in the public right-of-way on the frontage of the property, typically offset from the driveway entrance. And this is primarily so our operations and meter reading crews can have ready access to the meter to take readings and inspect and maintain the meter. We do require a backflow preventer on the customer side of the meter. This is typically a double check valve assembly, a small assembly that protects our potable water system from potential contamination due to backflow from non-potable water sources, such as private wells or irrigation systems. We know most of you have private wells and certainly can keep your private wells for irrigation use, but just keep in mind that the irrigation and domestic plumbing within your property must be kept separate. If you have a tank, a private on-site tank, one method you can use is to run a new domestic line to the top of the tank with an air gap on the inlet. You can find more detailed information about backflow preventers on our SCV Water website under our cross connection control program. Just go to the search bar and type in cross connection program and it should pop up. So next slide now, Lindsay, thanks. The cost to connect to our SCV Water system has two parts. The first and most significant part is what we call facility capacity fees. And if you're not familiar with that term, when you tap into our system, you're connecting to a large backbone of water supply and distribution systems that it takes to provide reliable water service to our over 73,000 connections that are our customers. This system consists of water treatment plants that treat water from the aqueduct, numerous water wells, and over 100 tanks and pump station and many miles of pipelines. As new users connect, we must, over time, build additional capacity to keep up with that demand. And so new customers are required to pay their fair share of new meters based on the size of the connection. The Water Board, our SCV Water Board, does set the price for facility capacity fees for new connections, and that's based on rate studies. And if you are interested, you can take a deeper dive by going to our website and typing in facility capacity fees in that search bar, and you'll find our current rates and the supporting rate studies and board resolutions. The second part of the cost is not as much, and that's for the meter installation itself. And that's the parts and labor to tap the line, run the service line, install the meter box, and set the meter. Originally, the state was not going to offer grant funds for individual homeowners to connect, but after some discussions with them over the last several months, they've agreed to consider paying for the cost of new residential meters for those that qualify. So to qualify, you must be a residential property owner, not a business, with an income that falls within certain criteria set by the state. And I'll have another slide on this in just a little bit. So next slide, please, Lindsay. So this is kind of a busy slide, but we wanted to give you an idea of about how much the cost might be so you can plan for it in advance. As I said, the facility capacity fees are the largest part of the cost. For a 1-inch meter, that's $15,224 in today's rates. These are published on our website and change year to year. So I would encourage you to go onto our website and take a look. And it's actually made up of two parts. There's a regional capacity fee and a distribution capacity fee. So the $15,224 for a 1-inch is the combined cost at today's rates. The cost to install the service line and the meter itself is only an estimate at this time. For a 1-inch meter, we're estimating about $5,000 based on just some of our historical cost data. We do, however, plan to include the cost for installation of new meters as part of the plans and bid package. So we'll be getting actual bid prices for the installation. And then new users would pay for the actual cost for the installation based on those bid prices. So that's kind of an idea of what some of the costs, and they do go up for 2-inch meters, as you can see, quite substantially. So next slide, please. So eligibility for grant funding. Grant funding for new residential connections. Grant funding is from the state, so we're following their approval process. For those that are eligible, the state will cover the cost for both the facility capacity fees and the actual installation. So that's the good news. To qualify, the property must be active residential use and occupied as such by the property owner or a tenant. You must have an annual income of less than $126,145, which is 150% of the state's median household income. And then you must also submit a household income certification form for review and approval by the state. You can submit that form to SCV Water, and we'll submit it to the state on your behalf. And again, the state said they'll need 2 to 3 months to review and approve those requests, which is why we're asking for the forms now. So that kind of concludes the first part of the presentation, which is an overview and some of the details on new connections. Next up, we'd like to go through some of the questions that have come in, some of the specific ones that have come in. So we'll go to that next. So first question is, I live just past the proposed project north of LARC Ranch, and I want to connect to the system. Can I connect? So first, the grant money only funds the pipeline to the LARC property. So that's kind of a starting point there. But there's also some very real physical limitations. As you know, the pipeline goes up a long hill to get to LARC, and the pressures are simply too low to adequately provide service pressure beyond the LARC property. So that would require us to install a new pump station and tank to be able to extend service, which is beyond the scope of this project at this time. Next slide, please. So I live or own a commercial property along Bouquet Canyon Road where the new pipeline will be constructed. However, I'm quite a ways off the main road. How can I connect to the new pipeline? So the answer to that, commercial property owners along the pipeline route can connect for a new or can apply for a new connection and connect. Just keep in mind that the conditions that we said regarding size and placement. Existing properties are limited to a single meter up to 2-inch in size. We would place the meter in the public right-of-way, typically off the driveway entrance. The property owner will be responsible for whatever is needed after the meter, including the backflow preventer we talked about, as well as any piping or a booster pump if it's needed to get to your buildings or structures. And I might add that just commercial properties are not eligible for grant funds. Next slide, please. So why will some people connect to the new public water system while others won't? The answer is our goal as SCV Water is obviously to provide a reliable water supply pipeline with the capacity for those that want to connect. We want property owners to know that they can connect now or in the future, but there's no obligation or mandate to connect now or in the future. Each property owner is going to have to make their own decision on what's best for them. Just keep in mind that the grant is a one-time offering from the state for those residential properties that qualify. Next slide, please. What if I don't want to receive service now? So there is no obligation, as I said, or mandate to connect now or in the future. You may request a meter in the future. Just keep in mind that you'd have to pay whatever costs are in effect at the future time, and that would include the facility capacity fees, which do change year to year, and the actual cost for installation by a contractor. And grant funds won't be available in the future. Next slide, please. Can I still use my private well? The answer to that is yes, private wells can be kept for irrigation use only. As I mentioned, the domestic line must be kept separate from the irrigation line. And one way to do it is to run a separate line from the meter to the top of an on-site tank if you have one with an air gap. Backflow preventer will be required at the meter. And we do have SCV Water inspectors that will work with you and check the backflow preventer and the piping to the tank. Next slide, please. Why will some people have to pay to connect while other people won't have to pay to connect? So that's a good question. The state is only offering grant funds for lower income residents that qualify, sort of in keeping with the project's goal to fund reliable water supply for LARC and Lily of the Valley, which are considered disadvantaged communities. The state will be reviewing and determine eligibility on a case-by-case basis, and we'll work with them on that. Some will qualify, others will not. If you think you do qualify, we would encourage you to submit the household income certification form so that we can follow up with the state on your behalf. Next slide, please. Will SCV Water help finance my connection to the new pipeline? The answer here is unfortunately no. Our charter does not really allow us to finance new meters, so we would need payment before construction starts. Based on that timeline, construction is expected to start next March 2024, and we'll keep you posted on that date. And that's why we're having this virtual meeting and letting you know now, so you have about 5 or 6 months in advance to plan. So next slide, please. What are the criteria for grant funding? So there's 2 criteria. First, you must be an active residential use and occupied as such. The property must be occupied as such. It can be the property owner or a tenant. Household income must be less than $126,145, which is that median 150% of the median state household income. You must submit that household income certification form to be considered, and I believe the residential meters will probably be limited to 1 inch, but that'll be something we'll be discussing with the state on a case-by-case basis. Next slide. So when are payments due? Payments are due before we issue the notice of award to the pipeline contractor. We anticipate this to be in March 2024, March of next year. We plan to send out deposit letters to each property owner that is requesting a meter, that we receive the intent to request a meter. We'll be doing that in January after we've received the bids and know the actual cost for the meter install. So the deposit letter in that will define that meter cost for the installation, as well as, and we'll reiterate what the facility capacity fees are for the meter size that are in place in January of 2024. And then the last slide, I believe, is will this pipeline project take the place of pursuing the restoration of Bouquet Creek, providing for the removal of limitation on releases? So as important as the Bouquet Creek restoration is to the community, and we recognize that, this this pipeline is a totally separate and distinct project. We believe the need for the pipeline is strong and will provide a sustainable and long-term water supply for LARC, Lily of the Valley, and the residents in between. And we've worked hard and we're able to secure grant funds from the state to make that pipeline happen. So, however, we do support efforts and have been working with stakeholders on the Bouquet Creek restoration at the board level and executive staff level. And Steve Cole, our assistant general manager, has been a part of that. So, so with that, that's all the questions that we had here in advance. I'll turn it back over to you, Lindsay.
Thank you. So as of right now, I've got 2 questions. Oops. The first one is, does the grant cover the cost of the meter?
So the answer to that is, if you're eligible and qualify, that yes, it's intended to cover the cost of the actual meter, the service line, the box, as well as the facility capacity fee. But you have to be, it has to be residential and approved. But if approved, yes, it does. Not, it doesn't, and that's the installation cost. The once the meter is set, there will be ongoing, monthly fixed charges, and you pay for the water you use and that sort of thing. So it doesn't cover, billing afterwards.
Okay. And then the next question I have, it looks like there's a couple questions wrapped in there. The first part is, can we request a fire hydrant at Starfire / LARC?
We will have to look at the plans. We do have some fire hydrants along the pipeline route, and we placed them sort of strategically. We'll just have to look at that and see if that's an option or not.
Okay. The next question is, any plans for any sewer, or is this all for water only?
This is water only. SCV Water is a water agency. We're not in the sewer business, so that's county, I believe, or septic.
Okay. Next question is, any further clarification on if the tenant income will be used for qualifying for the grant versus the property owner? The form says to skip the income session for the owner and just to provide tenant information.
So I did ask the state about that because it was it looked like kind of a 2-step process. I think they will be interested in the tenant's income as well. It's my understanding, but I can follow up and confirm that with the state.
Okay. Next question is, if we plan to develop the property and want a 2-inch meter, but are not sure of the future use, how is the facility capacity fee calculated? It's a very wide range.
So I would encourage you to check the website for there's a table in there that shows the facility capacity fees. They are by meter size. They're set by meter size. They're calculated by meter size. So it's a 2-inch meter will have a certain fee associated with it, and it's made up of a regional and a distribution fee combined. So you have to add the 2 together, but you're right, there is a big jump from 1-inch to 2-inch. So, but it's just based strictly on meter size.
Next question is, where on Bouquet Canyon Road will the pipeline be? For example, will it be in the center of the road or on the shoulder?
So we're placing this on the and Bouquet kind of goes west to east and then south to north. So it's in the it'd be in the southbound westbound lane in the middle of the lane. So it's not in the middle of the road, but it's in the middle of the northernmost lane, if you want to look at it that way.
Okay.
not in the shoulder.
Okay. And then next question is, what is the depth of the pipeline?
It's we maintain it'll vary a little bit, but it's normally 3.5 feet of cover from the pavement.
Okay. Okay. And then next question, it was just thank you so much for the presentation. We are a church, so we assume we do not qualify for the grant. Does that mean that we need to pay more than the $57,000 presented here for a 2-inch line?
So there's no difference in rates depending on whether you're a church or a business or a resident. It's based strictly on the size of the meter, and so we will get and so there's the facility capacity fees again. So those prices are on the website, and they change year by year. The cost for the actual installation for a 2-inch will be higher, just because it's the service line's a 2-inch and the meter's a 2-inch and the box is a little bit bigger. So we'll get a price from the contractor, so we'll know what that is, but it would be yeah. So right now that $57K is an estimate. The capacity fees is published, so we know what that is, but the actual cost of the installation could vary a little bit. So hopefully we're estimating on the high side.
Okay. That is the last question that I have. If there's any other questions, feel free to put them in the Q&A box or put them in the chat, and we can get them answered. I'll give a little bit of time. I think that might be about it. As I mentioned earlier, you've got Brent's contact information as well as Courtney's. You can feel free to reach out to them with any questions that are maybe more specifically tied to your property, as we realize a lot of this might be a case-by-case basis. And just a reminder that applications and certification forms, if they're applicable to you, are going to be due on Friday, September 29th to SCV Water. And I think that's all we've got. Brent, anything or any closing remarks?
It's been a long time coming. We just thank everyone for their interest, and I know I've talked to several folks, over the last weeks and months, and so we look forward to getting this project, into construction. And feel free to reach out. That deadline will help us if you can get in your request for meters. I know we've gotten several requests, but there's still some, I think, that are in decision. So we want those by the 29th so that we can incorporate the actual meters and locations in the plans and bid package, so that we can move forward with actual bids on the project and including the meters. So I would encourage you to try to hold to that deadline if you can. With that, thanks again for everybody, and feel free to reach out one-on-one as you need.
Awesome. And then last reminder that the community meeting itself, there will be a link sent out to all of the participants, just in case you wanted to rewatch it. And we'll also make it available on our website. So thanks and have a great evening.